My name is Olivia, and for the last 10 years I've been the responsible one. That's the family code word for the ATM. But last Tuesday, at the exact moment my life was supposed to change, I finally realized they weren't just taking my money. They were taking my life. The auditorium in Austin City Hall was packed. I could feel the sweat on my palms as the mayor stood at the podium, his voice echoing over the speakers. This was it, the Austin Green Future Competition. I had poured 2 years of my life, outside of my actual job, into this proposal. A sustainable redevelopment plan for the old East Side yards. And the grand prize, including the full city contract, goes to Olivia Mason. My breath just stopped. I couldn't move. People were clapping, turning to look at me. I turned to look at my family, my parents, David and Susan, and my brother, Mark, in the front row. They were the only ones not clapping. Mark, my older brother, the artist, was literally just scrolling on his phone, looking bored out of his mind. My father was staring blankly at the stage, and my mother was looking down, texting. I stood up, my legs shaking, and started walking toward the stage. My entire future was opening up right in front of this crowd, and in that exact second, my phone buzzed in my hand. I looked down. It was the text from my mother, the one she was sending from the front row. It read, "This is taking forever. We need to go. Your father and I need you to cosign the loan for Mark's new touring van tonight. Don't forget." I was walking toward the biggest moment of my life, and to them, I was just an inconvenience holding up a signature. Being the responsible one sounds like a compliment, doesn't it? It sounds like you're dependable, stable, mature. But in my family, responsible just means usable. It's the brand they stamped on me so they wouldn't feel guilty. For 10 years, I've been Olivia, the family's walking, talking 401k. I'm the ATM, the emergency contact, the free therapist, and the loan officer who never says no. And the worst part is, I let them. Because I thought if I just worked hard enough, if I was just useful enough, one day they would finally turn to me and say, "We're proud of you." It started when I got into my master's program at UT Austin. It was a top-tier urban planning program, and I got a partial scholarship, but I was still terrified of the cost. My parents sat me down. "We'll help, of course, honey," my father David said. "But money is tight. You'll have to contribute." I translated, contribute meant pay for it all. So I did. I worked 2 jobs for my entire 2 years of graduate school. My days were a blur. Class from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. From 2:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m., I was a data entry drone for a municipal contractor, my mind turning to mush while I cross-referenced zoning codes. Then, I'd grab a $5 sandwich, run to the library for 3 hours, and from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., I was slinging drinks at a loud, sticky bar downtown. I'd get home, sleep for 4 hours, and do it all again. I lived on caffeine and guilt. The guilt was the worst part. Because I wasn't just paying for my tuition. I was paying for them. The calls always started the same way. "Olivia, honey, it's your mother. Everything okay?" "Good. Listen, don't be upset, but..." And then came the emergency. It was always an emergency. "Honey, the car's transmission just died. We're stuck. We need $1,200 by Friday." I drained my tips, the cash I was saving for my own rent. I ate ramen noodles for a month. 2 weeks later, I'd find out the dead car was fine. They just donated it to Mark, my brother, so he could get to his gigs. "Liv, your father's hours got cut. We're short on the mortgage. Just $2,000 to tide us over." I'd take an extra shift, pushing my exhaustion to a dangerous new level, and transfer the money. My own achievements were just expected. They were background noise. When I got that high-paying job right out of college, a stressful 60-hour-a-week position at a prestigious firm, there wasn't a celebration. There was an intervention. My father sat me down at the kitchen table, not with a champagne bottle, but with a spreadsheet. "Look, Olivia, this is fantastic," he said, tapping his pen on my new salary. "Wow. Now, I've run the numbers. If you just live at home for a few years, and we all pool our resources..." He had already calculated my take-home pay. He had a column for my contribution. He had my entire salary allocated to their mortgage, their utilities, and something new called Mark's Seed Fund. When I finally found my voice and said I wanted to get my own apartment, my mother, Susan, actually started to cry. After everything we've done for you, you'd abandon us right when we're finally getting ahead? Your brother needs this, Olivia. He's so close to his big break. So I caved. I live at home for that first year. It was my biggest mistake. My job, the one that paid for the roof over all our heads, was dismissed as just sitting at a desk. But Mark, who slept until noon and spent his afternoons composing on a guitar I paid for, he was working on his craft. I was expected to cook, clean, and run errands on my one day off because I wasn't creative and didn't understand pressure. The irony was so thick it choked me. I became a ghost in my own life, a financial utility. My mother would call me every single day on my drive home, not to ask how I was, but to vent for 45 minutes straight about how misunderstood Mark was, or how stressed my father was about the bills, the very bills I was paying. This award, this Green Future competition, it wasn't just a trophy. It was my escape hatch. It was a massive city contract. It was my name, my design, my future. It was the one thing I did entirely for myself in the stolen hours between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. It was supposed to be the one thing so big, so undeniably successful, that they'd have to finally see me. And they did see me. They saw me as the solution to their next problem, an upgraded ATM, the co-signer for a van. As I stood there, the applause in the auditorium sounding like it was a million miles away, that text message vibrating in my hand, I realized it all. They would never be proud. They would only be hungry. You can't have a forgotten daughter without a golden child. In my family, that's Mark, my older brother, my charming, charismatic, sensitive black hole of a brother, Mark. To hear my parents tell it, Mark is a visionary, a true artist. He's not lazy. He's decompressing. He's not unemployed. He's on a creative sabbatical. He's not a 32-year-old man living off his little sister. He's an incubating talent who is just this close to his big break. For my entire life, Mark's potential has been the family's religion, and I've been the one forced to pay the tithes. What is his art? He's a musician. I use that term loosely. He doesn't play gigs. He curates experiences. He doesn't have fans. He has a community, which consists of 3 other guys who also live with their parents. He doesn't just play songs. He explores soundscapes. This exploration has been the single most expensive venture in our family's history. When Mark was 25, he needed a ball 5. Recording studio. My father, David, drew up a budget. I had just gotten my first real job. They borrowed $15,000 from me, my entire savings, to soundproof the garage and buy a mixing board Mark didn't know how to use. He used it for 3 weeks, produced one unlistable 20-minute track of ambient whale noises, and then declared the vibe was wrong. Then came the concept album. This required a producer in New Mexico. I was paying the household grocery bill and part of the mortgage, so my parents reallocated the money they were saving to borrow $10,000 from me for Mark's artistic journey. He and his friend, the producer, spent a month in the desert, and all that came back was a series of blurry Instagram photos and a hard drive that Mark couldn't access anymore. The $10,000 was gone. The list is endless. The merchandise line, $5,000 from me for t-shirts he lived. Design that misspelled the name of his own non-existent band. The documentary about his process, $3,000 for a camera he pawned. And now the touring van. This wasn't just a vehicle. It was, according to my mother, a mobile creative hub. But Mark isn't even the real problem. He's just a black hole. The real problem is the people who feed it. My parents, David and Susan, they aren't evil, mustache-twirling villains. They are, in many ways, worse. They are true believers. They are so terrified of their son being a failure that they have built an entire alternate reality where he is a misunderstood genius. My father, David, is the enabler in chief. He's the logistics man. He treats Mark's fantasies like a legitimate startup. He makes the spreadsheets. He runs the numbers. He's the one who sat me down with my own salary calculated out, not as a father proud of his daughter, but as a CFO who just secured a new round of funding. He's the one who feels stressed by the bills, not because he's embarrassed to be taking money from his daughter, but I think I get my boring job can't quite cover the full scope of Mark's vision. He sees my success as a resource, nothing more. My mother, Susan, is the emotional one. She's the PR manager for Mar-a-Lago, the fantasy kingdom where he's king. She's the one who runs interference. She translates the world for Mark and translates Mark for the world. When I'd come home, exhausted from a 12-hour shift, she'd shush me at the door. Shh, Olivia, Mark is composing. You know he's too sensitive to noise. She's the one who wields the word family like a club. How can you be so selfish, Olivia? Your brother needs this. This is what families do. She is the master of the guilt trip. She is the one who, after I'd finally say no to some insane new expense, would call me an hour later, crying, "Your father is just so worried, Olivia. I don't know if his heart can take this stress. He's not sleeping. You're the only one who can fix this. The two of them, David and Susan, are a perfect self-sealing system. They have poured their lives, their identities, and every last cent of my money into the cult of Mark. My achievements, my degree, my scholarships, my job, and now this massive, career-defining award. They aren't mine." In their eyes, these are just fortunate windfalls for the family. They're resources to be allocated. And in their world, there is only one place for resources to go. Straight to Mark. That's why they could sit there in that auditorium and feel nothing but impatience. My triumph wasn't a moment of pride. It was a logistical hurdle. It was the forever they had to sit through before they could get to the real business of the night, securing my signature for Mark's van. My success, my name on a contract. It just meant I was a more creditworthy co-signer. My parents picked the restaurant, a celebratory dinner, they said. It was one of those aggressively trendy steakhouses in downtown Austin. Dark wood, leather booths, and the kind of menu where the prices aren't listed, which in my family meant only one thing: I was paying. We were seated in a plush semicircular booth. The place was loud, full of people laughing, glasses clinking. Real celebrations. I was still clutching the heavy glass award from the ceremony. I tried to put it down, but my mother insisted I show it off. Now I realized it was just a prop for her. All of us together, we're just so proud of you, Olivia. My heart, despite everything, gave a pathetic little flutter. Thanks, Mom. It's been a lot. It's just fantastic, my father David said, cutting me off. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at his briefcase, which he'd set on the seat beside him. And the timing, just perfect. Mark just grunted and asked the waiter for their most expensive appetizer. Perfect timing? I asked, a cold knot forming in my stomach. The buzz from the award ceremony was fading, replaced by a familiar, dreadful static. Exactly, David said. He smiled, a thin, tight smile, and clicked open his briefcase. Your mother and I and Mark, we've been working on something, a new business plan, and your win tonight, well, it's the final piece of the puzzle. It's fate, really. He pulled out a stack of papers. Not a professionally bound proposal. It was a 20-page document printed in color at a copy shop stapled in the corner. He unrolled the first page, a cover sheet Mark had clearly designed with some awful swirling font. It read, "Soundscape Horizons, a multi-state music and arts festival." I just stared at it. What is this? This, Mark said, suddenly animated, leaning in, is the future live. We're talking a new wave, curated, high-level experience. Think Coachella, but with actual artistic integrity. And I'm going to headline. My father held up a hand. Mark, let me handle the business side. He slid the papers across the table, past my untouched water glass, past my award. This is a real viable plan, Olivia. We've run the numbers. I looked down. It was a budget. The numbers were insane. Venue deposits, $50,000. Talent acquisition, A-list, $200,000. Marketing and Vive curation, $75,000. Where are you getting this money? I whispered, my voice sounding hollow. Well, that's the best part. My mother chimed in, her eyes gleaming. We're not. You are. I looked at her. What? Your award, honey, my father said, tapping the budget with his pen. It comes with that big city contract, right? And prize money. We looked it up. That's our seed money. That's our leverage. That's not what that is, I said, my hands starting to shake. The contract is for a municipal project. The prize money is for my firm, for development. It's not just a check. Don't get bogged down in the details, Olivia, David said dismissively. You're a professional now. You have standing. You're the face of Austin's green future. You'll be the primary investor. We'll use your name to secure the rest of the funding. I couldn't breathe. The clatter of the restaurant, the laughter, it all faded. What investment are you talking about? My father cleared his throat and flipped to the last page. We figured, to get this off the ground properly, to secure the land, we need an initial investment of $150,000 from you. Just to get us started. $150,000. I stared at him, at all of them. They were smiling, expectant, as if I'd just been offered a promotion, not a mugging. I finally found my voice. It was quiet, but it was cold. No, the smiles vanished. What did you say? My mother asked, her face tightening. No, I said, a little louder. No, that's insane. I'm not giving you $150,000. I'm not giving you any money for this. It's not happening. My mother's face flushed. Olivia, don't you dare be ungrateful. Ungrateful, I said, and this time my voice was sharp. A woman at the next table glanced over. Yes, after everything we've done, that education we paid for. I paid for, I snapped, my voice rising. I paid for my entire master's degree. I paid for it by working 2 jobs while you were siphoning my paychecks to pay for his recording studio. Hey, Mark spat, pointing a steak knife at me. That was a legitimate project. You're just a sellout, Olivia. You're just a corporate robot. You don't understand art. You don't believe in me. Oh, I believe in you, Mark. I said, the words tasting like acid. I believe you'll never work a day in your life as long as they, I gestured to our parents, are willing to bleed me dry to pay for your vibe. That's when my mother did it. She leaned across the table, her face a mask of poor theatrical betrayal. Her voice dropped, but it was loud enough for the tables around us to hear. You've changed, Olivia. This award, she said the word like it was a disease. It's made you arrogant. You're forgetting the family that supported you, the family that loved you. You'd rather have your money than your family? Is that it? People were staring. The waiter, holding a tray, had stopped. My father looked furious, not at her, but at me. My brother looked smug, like he'd just won. They had brought me here to this public place to celebrate me, but it was an ambush. They were trying to publicly shame me, to pin me with the labels ungrateful, selfish, arrogant. Also, I'd crack, so I'd sign the check just to make the humiliation stop. I looked at the 3 of them, their faces twisted in entitlement and anger, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel shame. I felt cold. I felt a pure, clean, clarifying rage. I carefully picked up my purse. I left the glass award on the table. You're right, I said, my voice perfectly level. I have changed. I stood up, looked at the waiter, and said, they'll be paying for their own meal, and I walked out. When I walked out of that restaurant, I didn't cry. I didn't speed off, peeling rubber in a fit of melodramatic rage. I just walked at a very steady pace for 12 blocks back to my apartment. The night air in Austin was cool. My mind, for the first time in my life, was perfectly, terrifyingly clear. The humiliation was gone. The guilt was gone. The static that had filled my head for a decade just stopped. I was finally, completely myself. You see, my family thinks I'm boring. They think I'm the stable one, the predictable one, the one who just sits at a desk and understands spreadsheets. They're not wrong, but they never understood what that really meant. I am a professional urban planner. My job is not art. My job is consequences. When a developer wants to build a 50-story high-rise, I'm the one who reads the 800-page zoning code, the environmental impact report, and the infrastructure load analysis. I'm the one who tells them, no, you can't build that because Section 4.1A of the municipal code says your water runoff projection violates state law. My entire career is built on reading the fine print, on understanding that actions have defined legal and irreversible consequences. My family, on the other hand, lives in a world without fine print. They live in a world of vibes and feelings and potential. They believe rules are for other people. They believe family is a magic word that erases all debt. I've always known this. And 5 years ago, I decided to build a bridge between my world and theirs. It was the first big loan. The $15,000 for Mark's recording studio. I had just started my career. It was almost all the money I had. I felt sick handing it over. Not just because I knew it was being set on fire, but because it was so disorderly. It was chaos. So I decided to introduce a little order. I went online, I downloaded a standard, ironclad, legally binding, promissory note template. I filled in the blanks. The amount, $15,000. The interest rate, a very generous, very legal, 4.5% APR. The payment terms, due in full upon demand. I brought it to the kitchen table. Dad, this is a lot of money, I said, my voice reversed. My accountant, I didn't have an accountant, but my accountant said that for any amount over the annual gift tax limit, I must have a paper trail. It's just a formality for the IRS so they don't audit me and think I'm hiding income. It's just protecting me. My father, the logistics man, barely glanced at it. Smart, Olivia. Good. Protecting your assets. Always smart. He signed it. My mother rolled her eyes. You're always so dramatic, honey. Part, they just saw formality. It became my ritual. My one secret act of self-preservation. The $10,000 for the concept album in New Mexico? A new note. Just for my tax records, Mom, she signed. The $5,000 for the t-shirt line? A new note. Just for the IRS, Dad, he signed. The $3,000 for the camera, the $7,000 for Mark's medical emergency, which was actually a bill for the car he'd totaled, the $4,500 for his legal fees from that same accident. Note. I was meticulous. I had every note notarized for my files. They thought it was cute, and so Olivia, to be so organized. They had no idea. They were so blinded by the money I was giving them, they never once paid attention to the documents they were signing. In a fireproof safe in my quiet apartment, I have a folder. It contains 7 separate promissory notes. The principal alone is over $80,000. With interest, it's far more. It's a little black book of their sins, written in their own handwriting. But that was just my shield. That wasn't the weapon. The real weapon came to me a year ago. I was at my desk, late. I was running comps for a redevelopment project, looking at public property records. On a whim, I typed in my parents' address. I don't know why. I was just curious. Their house was, after all, the collateral for so many of my loans. I saw the loan origination. I saw the high interest variable rate. I saw the balloon payment due in 3 years. And I saw the lender, Austin Community Credit Union, a small local bank. I know those banks. In my line of work, I know their weaknesses. They're small. They get over-leveraged. And to improve their books, they often sell off their high-risk loan portfolios, mortgages just like my parents, for pennies on the dollar. My heart was hammering. This was a long shot. A crazy, wild long shot. I called my lawyer. I'd used him to set up a small LLC for some freelance consulting work I did. He was a quiet, shark-like real estate attorney. James, I said, I have a strange question. 2 days later, he called me back. You're not going to believe this, Olivia. I made some anonymous inquiries. Acu is desperate to get that portfolio off their books. They're shopping it. Actively. It was the scariest check I have ever written. I drained my real savings. The accounts I kept hidden. The money I'd piled up from my 60-hour work weeks. I drained every last cent. Through my anonymous LLC, ATX Property Holdings. I bought their mortgage. I bought their debt. I bought their house. For the last 12 months, my parents have been mailing their mortgage check to a P.O. box. That P.O. box routes to a bank account. That bank account is mine. They have no idea. My father, the CFO, thinks he has a high-interest loan with a small-time bank. My mother, the PR manager, thinks their only asset is the equity in the house. They have no idea that I am the bank, that I am the equity. When I got home from the celebratory dinner, I didn't go to bed. I walked to my safe. I pulled out the crisp, neat folder. I laid the 7 promissory notes on my kitchen table. On top of them, I placed the mortgage assignment document. They tried to humiliate me into funding their fantasy. They tried to demand $150,000. They have no idea. I am holding $340,000 of their debt. This isn't a family dispute. This is a foreclosure. They didn't call. Of course they didn't. Calling ahead would imply I had the right to say no. The next morning, a Saturday, the banging on my apartment door was so loud it shook my coffee mug. It was 10 a.m. I wasn't surprised. I was ready. I had been up all night, not pacing, not crying, just organizing. The folder was on my kitchen counter. I opened the door. All 3 of them were there, standing in the hallway, looking like a storm cloud. My father, David, was holding his briefcase. My mother, Susan, had her arms crossed, her face set in a mask of profound disappointment. Mark was behind them, bouncing on his heels, radiating a manic, entitled energy. Olivia, my mother said. No. Hello. She pushed past me into my apartment, as if she still paid the rent. I am just appalled at your behavior. Leaving us like that, humiliating your father and me? What has gotten into you? We are here, my father said, walking in and setting his briefcase on my dining table with a thud. To finish the discussion you ran away from. He clicked it open. We've cooled off. We are willing to overlook your little outburst. We're here for the checks, Mark said, walking straight to my fridge and opening it. You got any real food? Or just yogurt? I just stood by the door. I closed it, very softly. The click of the deadbolt sounded unnaturally loud. There's nothing to discuss, I said. My father, who was pulling out the Soundscape Horizons proposal, looked up. Don't be childish, Olivia. We're a family. We had a disagreement. Now, I've had the bank draw up the cosigner paperwork for the van, and we need to get started on the investment papers for the festival. No. My mother sighed, a theatrical, long-suffering sound. Olivia, honey, we know you're stressed. That new job, the award, it's a lot of pressure. But you cannot take it out on your brother. You cannot take it out on your family. We are your support system. No, I said again. I walked past them and stood on the other side of my kitchen counter, placing my hands flat on the cool granite. There will be no van. There will be no festival. I will not be investing. I will not be co-signing. I will not be giving you $1 more. Ever, Mark laughed. A short, ugly bark. She's bluffing. She's just being dramatic. She wants us to beg. My father's face hardened. This was the part he hated, the part where his asset was malfunctioning. Olivia, he said, his voice dropping, I don't think you understand the position you're in. You just won a major city contract. You are now a public-facing figure. It would be a terrible shame if your new partners, your new employers were to find out how you treat your family, how you abandon the people who made you. There it was, the threat, the idea that my entire career, the one I had built with my own blood and exhaustion, was just a hostage he could use against me. I looked at him, at all 3 of them, the disappointed mother, the visionary brother, the logical father. All of them standing in my apartment threatening to destroy my life for a van. I didn't yell. I didn't even raise my voice. I just clicked. Okay, I said. I turned, picked up the neat, heavy folder from my counter, and placed it on the dining table, right next to my father's ridiculous proposal. What's this? My mother asked, suspicious. More of your work? In a way, I said. I untied the ribbon and opened the cover. You're right, Dad. We should talk about business. We should talk about finances. Let's start with this one. I slid the first document across the table. This is a promissory note. For $15,000, dated 5 years ago, for a recording studio. Here's your signature, Dad. And yours, Mom. My father stared at it. What is this? We told you. That was for your taxes. Here's the next one, I said, sliding the second paper on top of it. $10,000 for a concept album. Note the interest rate. Again, both your signatures. Olivia, this is ridiculous, my mother snapped. This isn't real money. This is family, I said. I slid the third one. 5,000 for the t-shirt line. Slide. 3,000 for the camera. Slide. 7,000 for the car mark total. Slide. 4,500 for the legal fees from that accident. Slide. 8,000 for the credit card debt you needed to consolidate last year, Mom. They were all on the table now, a neat, overlapping pile of their own greed. Mark had stopped looking in the fridge. My father was pale, the principal alone. I said, my voice, as calm as a legal brief, is $80,400. With accrued compounded interest, as specified in the documents you both signed, the total amount due is $102,745.18. It is, by the terms of every single one of these contracts, due in full upon demand. I am demanding it. My mother just gaped. You kept a list? You were charging us interest? What kind of monster are you? I'm a good accountant, I said. But that's not the real business we need to discuss. My father was silent, staring at his own name over and over. This, I said, is the real business. I took the last document from the folder, the mortgage assignment. I placed it on top of the pile. This is a record of assignment from the Austin Community Credit Union. A year ago, they sold off their high-risk mortgage portfolio. I, through my holding company, ATX Property Holdings, LLC, bought it. Specifically, I bought your mortgage. My father's head snapped up. His eyes were wide, confused. What? What does that mean? It means, Dad, that for the last 12 months, that check you've been mailing to a P.O. box, it's been coming to me. I am your bank. I own your house. The silence in the room was absolute. Mark looked like he'd been slapped. My mother's hand was at her throat. So, I said, folding my hands, I will not be investing in Mark. In fact, I'm cutting off all family funding. And as your new mortgage holder, I'm formally notifying you that your interest-only period is over. The full principal and interest payments begin in 30 days, or you can pay the full balance of the promissory notes. Your choice. My father, David, just stared at the mortgage papers. He sank very slowly into one of my dining chairs. He didn't look angry. He looked hollowed out. He finally, truly understood. He had been outmaneuvered by the one person in his family who actually understood numbers. Mark, however, did not understand. His face went purple. You, what? You bought? You can't do that. He lunged across the table, not at me, but at the papers, grabbing the Soundscape Horizons proposal. This is my future. You're trying to steal it. Steal it, I said, not moving a muscle. This isn't stealing, Mark. This is consequences. These are contracts, words you've never had to learn. I didn't trick them. I just documented the truth. I just trusted them to honor their signatures, the same way they trusted me to pay for their entire lives. That's when my mother, Susan, found her voice. And of course, it was a wail. The breakdown began. The tears, which had been so effective for so long, started to flow. Olivia, how could you? She sobbed, clutching her chest. After everything, you'd make us homeless, your parents, you'd put your own family on the street. She was projecting, her voice rising to a pitch of perfect manipulative victimhood. You're a monster. You're a vampire. You were keeping lists. While we loved you, you're killing your father. Look at him. She pointed at my father, who was just sitting there, silent, his face in his hands. He finally looked up. He looked old. She's right, David, Susan shrieked. Tell her. Tell her she can't do this. Tell her we're her family. My father just looked at me. His voice was a rasp. Is this legal, Olivia? Perfectly, I said, my voice cold and flat. I'm a creditor. You are debtors. That's all. You've made family a business transaction for 10 years, Mom. I'm just the one who finally brought the receipts. Stop, she cried. The homeless card doesn't work, Mom. Stop. I'm not making you homeless. I'm not even asking for all my money back, though I could. I'm here, in my own home, On a Saturday morning, you've interrupted to give you the one thing you never gave me. I'm giving you a choice. Mark had stopped yelling. They were all listening. The hope of a loophole, an out, was the only thing that could silence them. This is the family deal, I said. You have two options, and only two. You will pick one. I held up one finger. Option one. You sell the house. You sell it immediately. It has significant equity, even with the mortgage. From the proceeds of the sale, you will first pay me the full $1,200,745.18 from the promissory notes. I'm waiving the mortgage balance in this scenario. Call it my one family gift. You will take the remainder, which will be significant. Enough to get a nice apartment, enough to start over, enough, I looked right at Mark, to fund whatever dream you want with your own money. You'll be free of me. I'll be free of you. We sign the papers, and we are done. Forever. I held up a second finger. Option two. You keep the house. But you, I pointed at my father. And you, I pointed at my mother. Get full-time jobs, real ones, with pay stubs, which you will be sending to my lawyer. Mark's allowance is over. He is cut off completely. He can get a job, or he can curate experiences on the street. I don't care. But not one more cent from either of you. And you will begin a new, strict 10-year payment plan to me for the $102,000. That will be on top of the new full principal and interest mortgage payments you now owe to my LLC. You will pay me every month like clockwork. If you miss one payment, I foreclose. I take the house and you walk away with nothing. I let that hang in the air. The total, brutal, beautiful clarity of it. You can't do this, Mark finally whispered, his face ashen. He'd done the math. Both options meant he lost. I can, I said. And I am. The choice is yours. Work or walk away. Those are your only two futures. My mother was hyperventilating. Work? David can't work his heart. He's been working a 60-hour week for 10 years trying to make your son a star, I said, my voice sharp. My work is just asking you to be adults. You have 48 hours to decide. I walked to my desk, picked up a notepad, and wrote a name and a number on it. This is Mr. James, my lawyer. He is expecting your call on Monday morning with your decision. He will be handling all communication from now on. I will not be taking your calls. I will not be answering your texts. This conversation between us is over. I held the piece of paper out. My father, moving like a robot, stood up and took it. Now, I said, walking to my front door. I'm moving. That finally got a new reaction from my mother. What? Moving where? You can't just leave? We're in a crisis. I'm in a contract, I said. My green future contract. I'm moving into a new apartment in the redevelopment district I'm now designing. I'm going to go build a future, Mom. A real one. You three, you should decide what you're going to do with yours. I opened the door, wide. I stood next to it. I think you should leave now. They were broken. The rage, the guilt, the entitlement, it was all gone, replaced by a hollow shock. They were three strangers in my apartment who had just been served with an eviction notice from my life. My father, moving mechanically, picked up his briefcase. The Soundscape Horizons papers, which had fallen on the floor, he just left there. He walked out. Mark followed, not even looking at me, his face a mask of furious, impotent hatred. My mother was last. She stopped in the doorway. She looked at me, her eyes pleading for one last, desperate attempt at a guilt trip. Olivia, my baby. Goodbye, Mom, I said, and I closed the door in her face. The click of the deadbolt was the loudest sound I've ever heard. I stood there, my back against the door. I didn't cry. I didn't cheer. I just breathed. I took one long, slow, shuddering breath. It was the first breath I'd taken in 10 years that wasn't contaminated with their needs, their noise, their emergencies. It was the first breath of my own life. It was the sound of liberation. It's been a year since what I call the audit. It's strange. For so long, I thought the problem was me, that I wasn't working hard enough, giving enough, or being supportive enough. I thought if I could just achieve one more thing, if I could just give them one more check, I would finally get the one thing I craved, their approval. The truth is, my mother called me a vampire. a monster. But I wasn't. I was just a mirror. Secret weapon. Those neatly notarized promissory notes and that mortgage document. It wasn't an attack. It was just the truth, written in their own handwriting. It was the receipt for a decade of exploitation. It was never about the money. Not really. The money was just how they kept score. I finally realized the withdrawals weren't just from my bank account. They were from my life, my time, my self-worth. I was their utility, their infrastructure. And when I finally sent them the bill, they acted like I was the one robbing them. My conclusion, my attitude, I don't feel anger anymore. I don't even feel sad. I just feel quiet. I learned that family is not a magic word that entitles you to destroy someone. It's not a blank check for abuse or a shield from consequences. I didn't break my family. They were broken long before I started keeping records. I just stopped paying for the illusion. As for what happened next, it was as predictable as it was pathetic. They chose option 1, of course. Option 2 would have required them to do the 2 things they had spent 30 years avoiding: get real jobs and, more importantly, admit that Mark was not a genius. So they sold the house. My lawyer, Mr. James, handled the entire closing. I never spoke to them. A check for $102,745.18 was wired to my LLC. They paid their debt. I've heard through the grapevine an old aunt who still talks to me that they are living in a 2-bedroom apartment over in Round Rock. Mark, who is 33 now, lives with them. His Soundscape Horizons Festival never happened, but he's apparently workshopping a new concept. My mother tells everyone who will listen that I became cold and greedy after my success, and that I stole their family home. They have less money, and their world is much smaller, but their fantasy is intact. They just have a new villain to blame for all their problems: me. They are together, miserable and unchanged. And me? I took that money, my money, and I used it as the down payment on my own condo. It's in the redevelopment district. I can see the new city park, my park, being built from my living room window. My green future project is my entire life, in the best way possible. The work is hard, it's real, and it's mine. My name is on the contracts, not as a cosigner for someone else's dream, but as the architect of my own. My phone doesn't ring with emergencies. My weekends aren't spent managing my mother's anxieties or my father's spreadsheets. I am completely and totally no contact. My liberation wasn't that click of the deadbolt when I kicked them out. It's the thousands of quiet, peaceful, ordinary moments I've lived every day since. They thought my boring job, my spreadsheets and codes made me weak. They were wrong. It made me precise, and it finally made me free.